Compassion by Rebecca Lobsinger. Compassion is the emotional response of caring for another's suffering and wanting to help alleviate it. Where empathy is about feeling with someone, compassion involves an actual act and desire to support others. It's a universal value emphasized across cultures, religions, and philosophies. Compassion strengthens relationships, enhances mental and physical health, and contributes to safer, more connected communities. Whether through small gestures or broader social action, compassionate behavior builds trust and fosters resilience. Compassion isn't always easy. Sometimes we get burned out, we struggle with our own biases, or we worry that being too caring might make us seem weak. But the good news is, compassion isn't something you either have or you don't have. It's something you are born with and something you can grow. Being more mindful, opening yourself up to different perspectives, and learning to be kind to yourself are all ways to build it. In the end, compassion can really change lives, your own and the people around you. According to Paul Gilbert's book Compassion, Penny Spicken speaks to the history of compassion. Archaeologists have produced a great amount of evidence that suggests care for those in need was part of everyday life for the earliest humans, and evidence shows that it carried on into other eras and species of humans as well. Spickens covers how evidence of care is found easier in early years rather than later on, and also expresses, we might think we should be proud of a willingness to help others. The only explanation seems to be that care and compassion feel like a weakness. In early human history, violence was necessary for survival. Resources like food and shelter, they had to be fought for. Yet even then, compassion existed. Those that were unable to fend for themselves were cared for by their tribes. It is said that man descends from ape, and our similarities with apes are not just in biology, but also in behavior. Apes, like humans, show a deep ability to be able to express caring. Spickens notes that chimpanzees carry their deceased young around with them for weeks, yet show little response to the death of elders, mirroring early human practices. This care extended to tool making, aiding survival, and reflecting brain evolution over time. Archaeological evidence shows that physically challenged individuals lived long lives, proof that they were supported. While emotional or cognitive differences are harder to trace, Spicken affirms that we can identify an early willingness to accommodate those who were cognitively different and who struggled with that difference. In American culture, independence and personal freedom shape how we see compassion, more as a choice than a shared duty. People often express it through volunteering, charity, emotional support, or small acts of kindness, but involvement varies widely. Faith plays a big role, with churches and religious groups leading efforts like food pantries and shelters. Still, compassion isn't always evenly shown. Racism, inequality, and media influence who is seen as deserving, and that affects how we respond. We've been slow to recognize compassion's real power. It's not just kindness. It can improve mental health and can build stronger communities. In recent years, schools and workplaces are starting to prioritize it. It's likely due to the mental health crisis that we are in. In the US, compassion is shaped by independence, religion, and culture, but those values don't always reach everyone equally. In Africa, compassion is shaped by culture and community. The philosophy of Ubuntu, I am because we are, reflects a deep sense of shared responsibility and interconnectedness. Across the continent, compassion is expressed through emotional, physical, and spiritual care, often led by traditional healers and community members. In East and West Africa, elders are highly respected and supported. Communities rally together during illness, death, or hardship, sharing food, shelter, and emotional support. Central and Southern African cultures also emphasize communal care, using music and dance to express compassion, especially in times of grief or celebration. In North Africa, compassion is rooted in hospitality and Islamic teachings. People open their homes to guests and give generously without expecting anything in return. Across all regions, compassion is seen as a shared duty. expressed through generosity, respect for elders, and cultural traditions like storytelling and rituals. This contrasts with the US, where compassion is often viewed as a personal choice shaped by independence. While both cultures value care and faith, African cultures embed compassion in daily communal life, whereas in the US, it tends to be more individual and voluntary. I found the science behind compassion really fascinating, especially since I haven't given it any thought prior to taking this course. Our brains are very complex, and research shows compassion isn't just a nice feeling, it's hardwired into us. Paul Gilbert in Compassion explains, we attribute casualties, learn from the past, and predict the future. Such competencies give rise to what we call wisdom. He also notes, quoting the Dalai Lama, that enlightenment also comes from intention guided by wisdom. In science, he helps reveal how compassion shapes brain activity. Enlightenment isn't just spiritual, it comes through intentional choices. Understanding how our brain works and how emotions shape us can help us become more compassionate. When we witness pain, parts of the anterior cortex, which is responsible for empathy, light up. Compassion boosts activity in these areas, increasing our ability to connect with others. It also activates the brain's reward system, which releases dopamine and serotonin, which is why helping others feels so good. As Keem points out, kindness literally changes the brain. Gilbert also references Siegel's idea that our brains are energy stimulated and information transferring rather than decontextualized anonymous units. In other words, our minds are shaped by relationships and surroundings, not isolated. That's why practices like meditation can strengthen compassion by helping us better understand others' emotions.
Hi, I'm Tamara House. I am 58 years old. Today is February 17th, 2025, and I am speaking with Rebecca Labsinger, who is my best friend.
Do you believe that everyone has the ability to be compassionate, or do you feel it is something that requires a certain mindset or skill?
Yeah, I've met a lot of people that aren't compassionate, so no, not everybody has that ability. It does take a mindset. It does take skill. It takes thinking of the word experience, I guess. I don't believe most people can automatically feel compassionate to somebody. They may feel bad for somebody. They may say, oh, wow, that's too bad, and then they move on with their life, and that's not being compassionate. So I think it just takes a lot of experience and a lot of practice.
I've always seen myself as a compassionate person, thanks to the loving and nurturing home that my parents provided us. Raised in a Catholic family, I believe everyone is born good, and that harmful behavior stems from life circumstances, not from someone simply deciding to be a bad person. Before this class, my compassion was more selective, almost a pick and choose mentality. I found it easier to empathize with those suffering through no fault of their own. It was harder to feel compassion for those who made harmful choices. Personal connection has always deepened my compassion, and when I love and care for someone, that feeling grows even stronger. Where I've consistently struggled is with self-compassion. I tend to put others first, even when I'm in need, and I often feel guilty taking time for myself. Though my parents balance compassion for others with self-care, I've internalized the idea that pausing for myself is a weakness, even though I know now that it's actually a strength. I can't pinpoint exactly why I feel this way, which is frustrating, but I'm learning to accept that and focus on growing anyway. Grief has been a part of my life, and I've often pushed aside my own emotions in order to support others. This class has helped me see how important it is to allow myself the same compassion I so freely offer to others. My perspective on compassion has definitely changed as we progress through the assignments in the course. Entering this course, I vowed that I would be vulnerable and really focused on improving my overall well-being, committing to learning and growing so I can be a better person in all aspects of my life. Mission accomplished. I have definitely expanded my perspective on compassion, and I recognize how selfish I have been focusing on only people that have really done good and not giving people that have walked a different path or people that have not had some of the privileges that I have had in my youth, as well as in my adult life, a fair opportunity. Working through one of our assignments, which was listening to Step Inside the Circle, as well as the Prison Compassion Project, it was during these videos that I noticed the biggest change and shift within myself. When I first reviewed the assignment, I had firm thoughts in my head that I would not have compassion for those that have done severe acts that landed them in prison because they had a choice, and yet they chose wrong. When I first started listening to Step Inside the Circle, I could feel the tug of war within myself almost immediately. I did not know these individuals, but my heart surely hurt for their stories and for each of them. Before I knew it, I had tears in my eyes and I felt like I could feel their pain. Before I knew it, those tears were rolling down my cheeks. I felt the sorrow of their stories, the craving to be loved, to be wanted. Though my mind still continued to try to stay with my original thought process, which was that I would not have compassion for these individuals, as I continued to listen, I could physically feel the change and the shift inside me. Hearing their stories, hearing their challenges, the lack of love and support they had experienced at such young ages and that continued into their adult lives, I could tell that they were genuinely speaking from their heart, and you could tell how much they craved to be loved, to be supported, to be accepted. Many of their stories were heart-wrenching in their own ways. I've known people personally that have been victims of domestic violence, of rape, and even murder. The stories of these individuals in the videos caused me to think about my own personal experiences and how I have witnessed abuse, the aftermath that comes from that abuse, and the loss and all of the other feelings. I realize that it is a lot easier for me to have compassion for people that have done wrong that I was not connected to personally. However, it did make me realize that the people I knew that had committed crimes had a story as well that I never took the time to hear and truly listen and try to understand. Though I noticed a shift in my thought process earlier in the class and in the work that we were doing, this was a pivotal point for me. Who was I to be judge and jury for anybody? There is only one judge, and I too will meet him one day. As I continued to listen to the videos, the only one that truly resonated with me and that I listened to multiple times was Step Into the Circle. One quote really stood out to me from Samuel Brown where he stated, "None of us in here were born evil, and many men turned and women turned to criminal behavior as a result of not knowing how to process their emotions or what they were dealing with." This quote has really stuck with me because he's absolutely correct. No one is born evil. There are so many different influences in the world, environmental, emotional, social, that shape our behaviors and the decisions that we make. A quote from our textbook, Compassion, echoes this idea. Depressed mothers can be very motivated to care and be compassionate to their children, but depression can block those affectionate and caring feeling states. Many of the inmates that shared their stories spoke about the lack of having a loving and nurturing atmosphere and support when they were growing up. This is likely a leading factor that influenced many of the decisions these gentlemen made in their early years as well as later on in life. Their acts, their choices, were likely a cry for help, yet no one answered that cry. Though nothing can truly justify someone's actions where they hurt another individual or endanger somebody, especially intentionally, whatever their crime is, it can't be exonerated. However, pausing and thinking about their emotions, their feelings, what it must have been like to walk in their shoes, I can only imagine how they must have felt. I imagine that there was a great sense of abandonment, of failure, a feeling of no self-worth. Not many are likely to overcome those types of hurdles. As my thoughts dive deeper into this, I reflect on my own experience more. During my high school years, I didn't always make the best choices. I had two very different friend groups. I became involved with a guy who brought me into a very rough crowd. Being with this group influenced me differently from my other friend group, and it subjected me to a very different lifestyle and unfortunately opened me up to physical and verbal abuse. I did not fully own this in our classwork, and I touched on it but did not fully open myself to it. I'm choosing to remind myself that I committed to being vulnerable. I know that my experiences with Tyree and his crew impacted who I am today. And as I reflect more on this, I'm really wondering if that is where my inability for self-compassion stems from. I could not show him any form of weakness. In my mind, I could not subject anyone from my core group to him in the way that I knew him. And it was actually my cousin Jenny and my friend Andy that recognized my need and helped me to be strong enough to get away. I'm thankful for both of them, and I knew in that moment that if anyone would stand by me and support me, it would be them too. In Paul Gilbert's book Compassion, Mario Mikulsner and Philip Shaver state, an abiding inner sense of attachment security based on actual experiences promotes general faith in other people's goodwill, a sense of being loved, esteemed, understood, and accepted by relationship partners, and optimistic beliefs about one's ability to handle challenges, frustration, and distress. This quote really resonates for me. I feel in many ways it encompasses what I went through as well as what I craved and how I have actually grown from it. I think of the ways that my situation compares to some of these men's stories, and the primary difference is I felt the love and support from my family and from my core group of friends. I was never alone. Without that, I could have easily made some wrong choices that could have impacted my life and made the outcome very different.
Hello, I'm Patrick McMeal. I am 52 years old, currently the president and CEO of the Mount Pleasant Area Chamber of Commerce. But for the last 25 years, I've been in higher education, working in college athletics.
When you referenced how your parents had went through a divorce, and obviously it sounds like Dad was handling the situation one way, your mother was handling it a different way. How was that for you were you able to give compassion to both at that age and not knowing exactly what you were probably doing? But what did that kind of look like?
No, I think absolutely. I mean, again, even just, I'm kind of getting goosebumps thinking about this part of it, that I don't necessarily know why, other than I know how my father invested and how my mother invested in me. And so I think when the difficult times came about, because of those foundations that they had provided me, I was able to I could kind of evaluate, be aware of what was going on, and then make a decision. Now, I can't psychologically say why did I decide to go one way or the other, but I think for sure it was something that I was taught as much as anything. I was taught to be a good person. I was taught to treat people well, with respect.
As I mentioned earlier, I have suffered a lot of loss in my life, and I would like to share about one of them. My cousin Jenny and I were just 4 months apart and raised more like sisters than cousins. We fought like sisters, we loved like sisters, and we raised our families side by side. In April 2021, she was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is the most aggressive form of brain cancer you can have, and she was given just 6 to 9 months to live. We were blessed with 32 months, and we filled that time with love, laughter, and every emotion imaginable. From the start, I felt an urgency to be with her, to make sure she knew how much she meant to me, and to support her and her family however I could. Even before the official diagnosis came through to us, I was overwhelmed with disbelief. I had already lost my oldest sister to cancer, and I selfishly thought, I can't go through this again. Gilbert writes in Compassion about the state of feeling compassion for recently losing someone specifically. It is likely that in the first case, the feeling states emotions are of urgency and anxiety. In the second, sadness and sorrow. And in the third case, a degree of anger at injustice. I felt every one of these emotions, and I still do. I treasured every moment with Jenny, even as the sadness and the fear grew. We knew what was coming, and we knew we couldn't change anything. When I told her I wished I could take her pain, she grew angry, not at me, but at the thought, insisting she wouldn't wish this on her worst enemy. Throughout her illness, I made countless 2-hour drives to be with her, after work, overnight, every weekend, whenever she needed me, and probably even when she didn't. That drive became second nature. After she passed, I would hop in my truck and my GPS would continue to tell me how long before I reached Jenny's, rather than my own house. That was hard, and it was even harder when it quit telling me that. People have often told me that I'm the strongest person that they know, Jenny included, but I've always struggled to see myself that way. I know how fragile I feel beneath the surface at times, and that fear of breaking makes self-compassion very difficult for me. My husband once said, my strength is both my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. He's right. I need to learn to show myself the same grace I offer to others, because no one can be strong all the time. Compassion comes in many forms, and storytelling is one of the most powerful. When someone shares their story, they invite others into their world, offering a chance to connect, understand, and empathize. Vulnerability through storytelling builds trust and creates space for healing, not just for the speaker, but for the listener as well. Looking back, I see how my experience shaped who I am today. Where I used to struggle to find my voice, after 22 years with the same company, I've evolved into a transformational leader who is deeply committed to helping others grow. My leadership is centered on problem solving, guiding individuals as they explore their options and outcomes. As Martin and Heimberg referenced in Compassion, transformational leaders want to be a source of the relief and prevention of suffering. I resonate with this idea and with their belief that compassionate leaders take joy in fostering growth, using their knowledge to mentor and guide others. There's nothing more rewarding to me than seeing someone I've coached succeed and achieve their goals. I'm fortunate to work for an organization that values compassionate leadership. It's about meeting people where they are at, listening, supporting, and creating an environment where everyone can thrive. As Martin and Heimberg point out, lower levels of compassion are related to lower levels of positive leadership, as well as lower levels of overall well-being. I can say that that is not acceptable where I work. For me, combining transformational and compassionate leadership is non-negotiable. It builds connection, trust, and fosters true growth.